Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of VietMenClub. It is Friday. I hope y'all had a good week. How was your week, Alex?
Pretty busy as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have going on this week, man?
Just work, man.
Just work?
Lots of work.
You don't want to tell us about that little side project? I'm trying to give you an opportunity to do your plug, Alex. Let people
Yeah,
know what you got going on.
Oh yeah, I am starting a new drone videography business. I'm a Part 107 FAA drone pilot, so I can do videography for commercial purposes and stuff. So
Very nice. Do you have the links for your business ready?
I can put them in the chat.
Okay, or will you have it ready? You can, we can add it. Yeah, we can add it to the chat later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested in getting Alex out and do a little recording of whatever activity that you're doing, whether it's motorcycle riding, jet ski, car racing, or just running up and down the hill for absolutely no reason at all, hit him up. He has all the equipment and he has the skills to get you a really, really good video. So anyway, my week was okay. Thanks for asking, Alex.
My bad.
That's all good. Now I had a pretty good week, man. It like first half of the week felt really slow, cause like on Wednesday I was talking to my girlfriend and I was like, man, it's only Wednesday, cause I was in meeting back to back all day, so and then boom, here we are Friday night, and so I'm glad it is Friday night. I'm glad to be back here, sitting down and doing a podcast. It's my chance to kind of like unwind a little bit, I got my drink set up today. I had a difficult time deciding on what I should drink today. So I got all three. I got Japanese whiskey, 2 choices of tequila. We won't be doing a review today because those are like old bottles, but they are some of my favorites, so they're good. So if you need to know what they are, just drop your comment in the chat and Alex can share the information with you. Anyway, so for today's episode, it is my pleasure to have a friend of mine with us today. His name is Seth. I met him since I moved to Houston 3 years ago. We met at the racetrack. Can you put the camera on Seth now? Thanks, Seth. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you
If
for
you
being.
can't shake hands. It's weird like that.
Huh?
You can't shake hands. I have to go across.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
We fist
Fist
bump.
bump, yeah,
There you
that's
go.
it.
Hey, that's a new
Everything-
thing. That's a new kid.
Yeah,
I'm
all
still
the
old.
kids do fist bumps.
Sometimes I
now.
forget how old I am, and I do
Yeah.
old people stuff.
No, that's I'm the same way. Like we should exchange business cards or something.
Yes, agree totally. So this is Seth. Seth, would you mind to give us a little bit of information about you, who you are, what you do? You don't have to tell us where you work, but yeah.
Well, I'll tell you where I work.
Yeah. So take it away.
I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Okay.
That's the easiest thing to say about me. I moved to Houston almost 24 years ago with
Okay.
my wife. And
Yeah.
I worked briefly in the oil industry for not quite 2 years. And my wife and I decided to have kids.
Okay.
And because of I was working, I did a bunch of field work. So I was out of town a lot
Yeah.
and kind of hated my job and made quite a bit less money than my wife did. She also works in the oil industry, but she's better than me.
Okay.
And so when we decided to have a baby, I was like, all right, since we had agreed one of us staying home was ideal and we made enough money to do that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'll stay home.
Yeah.
For the time that it takes to do that, I'll stay home. Maybe I'll go back to school and get a mechanical engineering degree and sort of like train out to a different industry because I was just not super happy in the oil industry.
Right.
And then we had our first baby.
Okay.
And then we were like, babies are rad. Let's have another baby.
Nice.
And so we had a second kid.
Uh-huh.
And then we had a third kid.
Wow.
And then we had a fourth kid.
Wow.
And I never did go back to work.
Okay, so you have 4 kids.
I have 4 kids.
Wow. Are they? You have both boys and girls.
We had a girl and a boy and a girl and a boy.
Nice. So that's a nice combo right there.
Yeah, but it's also crazy. Like I could show you the videos, home videos that we took when we had. So we had all 4 kids in 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
like I had,
you guys were
I
working.
had kids continually in diapers for 8 years.
Yeah.
Like I never didn't have a kid in diapers for 8 years.
Right.
So when I show you the videos of my house during that time, it's just chaos.
Okay, I
Just
can imagine.
complete and utter chaos. Like riding a tricycle around the couch while other kids run around with drums.
Yeah.
Nobody's wearing any clothes. It was just like
Fun times.
It was it was super fun. But like that was the cauldron with which I was forged in my 30s, really. So
Okay, how old were you when you had your first child?
first one at 26, and my
26.
last one at 32.
Okay, 26. Wow, we just kind of jumped right into that. I was gonna ask, like, what was that like? What was that like having your first child? Was it planned for you guys?
Yeah, so that
Okay,
was like
it
all
planned.
4 of our kids. Like nobody believes me when I say this. All 4 of our kids were intentional. We were
Okay.
like, let's have another baby, and then we had another baby.
Nice.
And we did that all 4 times. And I think it's a little bit different when you high five someone. You're like, let's do a baby, yeah, baby, and then like you have a baby, because nobody's freaking out in quite the same way as you are when somebody comes to you and goes,
Yeah.
we're having a baby. Because
Right.
that's been like historically the norm in my family. All my siblings, like they were really good at accidental babies.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I love my nieces and nephews, wonderful people.
Right.
And my brother and my sisters who've had babies, and that's why like none of them believe me. They're like, nobody has 4 babies on purpose. I'm like, I swear to God, every single time.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, both of my kids were accidental, and I told them that too. But you know what? I'm glad they're
Well,
here.
it doesn't
You know what I mean?
it doesn't
Because
make them any less wonderful.
No,
it's
yeah.
just like for the kids,
Yeah.
it's fine. I think it provides a different stress for the parents going into it. So
yeah. I think so. It's just that it's not that I didn't want to have kids. I just felt like I wasn't ready.
right,
You know what I mean? And then I had other things that I wanted to accomplish first,
right.
prior to having kids. But you know, it was a blessing. Both of my kids, they decided to show up and force me to be a father to them. And
Even-
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Even when you have them on purpose, they force you to be better.
Yeah.
Anyway, right? Like,
Yeah.
Because you have to be. Like, I think we might have talked about this before, but like, you have to pretend to be as good as you think they should think you are.
Yes. I was gonna ask you about that. That was that was like one of the
Well-
questions that I have for you.
Well, you've seen me at the track with my daughter. Like that's
Yes.
where we met. Is
Mhm.
so my 3rd child is the only one who really wanted to ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
And I've had that talk about people too. They've had little kids and they're like, man, I can't wait till my kid gets to ride motorcycles with
Yeah.
me. I'm like, that's not something you can make someone want to do. You
Right.
can sort of introduce it to them, and some are into it and some aren't.
So
And-
you introduce all of your kids to motorcycle riding?
yeah, all at about the same time.
Okay. The same age, you mean?
Well, no,
Oh.
really all about the same time, because I got back into it. I did cars for a long time,
Okay.
and then I got back into motorcycles because one of my autocross students was like, "You should come do motorcycles with me." And then
Yeah.
as soon as I did motorcycles, I was like, I'm gonna do motorcycles. And I rode dirt bikes as a kid, and like I did that as a kid, and sort of went away from it because I didn't know about track riding.
Yeah.
And honestly, track riding, if all you know about track riding is big bikes, track riding looks really scary
Yeah.
and
Can be.
hard to get into, and especially coming from cars,
Yeah.
where like you go off track in cars. That's something you do. I've put a car into a wall before.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something you do. And the idea that you would go ride a bike in the same way is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I learned about little bikes on a track, I was like, yes, I'm in. I'm there. I'm going to do that. So
Yeah, you're pretty good on the little bikes, and yes, it was pretty cool. So when I first brought my daughter to the track, and I saw you guys, it made me feel better about making my daughter Right. You know what I mean? Because like for me, I like to force my kids to do things.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And because I feel like it's my obligation to force it onto them, and then at least make them do it for a while, and then give them the chance to decide whether or not they want to do it or not. But right off the bat, I think most kids, they're afraid to do it, so right off the bat they tend to just say no. You know what I mean? And so
But a
like
lot
for
of
me,
the kids who like to do it,
yeah,
like you can't hold them back.
true, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. But I wanted to at least kind of like, you know, because she was afraid. She was afraid. She's like, I don't know, you know, and it's a male
intimidating.
sport.
it is, but it's
Yeah.
just intimidating in general, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like
yeah.
anyone who's reasonably sane looks at it and goes, I could hurt myself doing that.
Yeah.
Even riding dirt bikes around the yard, right?
Yeah.
Like you go ride dirt bikes around the yard and normal people go, I think I'll just watch you.
Yeah,
Because it looks like you're going to do something. You're going to run into a tree. You're going to run into the house. You're going to fall over and scrape yourself.
yeah,
Because by the time most kids are like 4, 5, 6 years old
Mhm.
and have learned to ride a bicycle, like they know what crashing feels like.
yeah, yeah,
And then you put them on something that's loud and hot
yeah,
and faster than a bicycle,
yeah,
and they're like, "Yeah, I don't think I want to crash that. That looks
Yeah.
everything about that looks worse than
yeah.
what I know how
And
to
I
do."
think just the thought of the speed was intimidating to her.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
because, well, even though she was used to it, because when she was younger, I would put her on my motorcycle and I would take her to school like that, and she used to think it's like the coolest thing, because I put her in between my lap and the tank, and we would only stay in the neighborhood because, you know, the school was like right at the entrance of the neighborhood where we used to live.
Okay.
So I would used to take her to school like that, and she loved it. But when when I started talking to her about riding, and she's like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. You know, she
Right.
felt intimidated by that thought. But I'm glad, like I said, when I went there and you guys were there, I'm like, look, she's doing what what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And so that was somewhat motivating for her. And
by
thanks
that-
to you guys, thanks to you for letting me borrow your daughter for a little bit to work with her. The first day she was there. So
And by
That
then,
was nice.
Sonia was kind of a badass too. Like,
Yeah.
she was she was exactly what you want a daughter to be, in that, like, she was confident. She was good at something. She knew she was good at
Yeah.
something. The men around her didn't intimidate her at all.
yeah,
In
that probably have something to do with how you guys raised her. No.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I was a stay-at-home dad, because my wife is an incredibly successful, at what she does
Mhm.
in the oil industry. My kids don't have the same stereotypes necessarily as, if the roles were reversed, like my dad goes to work and does this, my mom stays home and does this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really easy to fall into the normal tropes of, like, this is what boys do and this is what girls do.
Yeah.
And I think if you grow up backwards from what most of your friends have,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you question all of that stuff. And you're like,
Yeah.
like boys can do this and girls can do this, or, other way, or anybody can do anything and it's fine.
Yeah. As a
Um,
father, since you have kind of like a reverse role, did you ever feel the need to explain that to your kids? Like, why is your dad staying home and mom's going to work? Do you ever feel the need to do that?
My kids were fine with it. Like we've talked about the fact that, mommy makes more money and loves going to work,
Yeah.
and daddy made less money and did not like going to work. and if you really talk to my wife and get to know my wife, she
Yeah.
is a type A, get things done person. Personality wise, she will tell you she couldn't have stayed home with kid. Like, she
Okay.
could not have stayed home.
Yeah.
She just, it's not in her as a person.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is, like, it's not like there's a gender bias towards, like, how people are
Yes,
suited towards staying at
absolutely.
home. Like,
Yep.
like if you made a graph, more like a higher percentage of women are probably going to be happier staying at home
Mm-hmm.
than men are. But it's not a perfect thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you get couples like my wife and I, where
Yeah.
I'm way happier being at home than my wife would have been.
Right. Right.
No,
no.
and not that it's been, like, super easy,
Yeah.
but it was fun for me in a way it never would have been for her.
Yeah. No, personally, I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think the biggest challenge for people is to do something that is out of the norm, right? And then from a male's perspective too, like, because society expect you, as a man to go to work, to take care of your family, to take care of your wife. Like, how can you stay home and, let your woman do that? On the other hand, that is your personal relationship. And you got to figure out what works best for you guys and for your kids. Because a lot of time, it's not worth it to go to work and get a paycheck when, half of that paycheck is going to go to somebody to watch your kid. And then they don't get the same quality of care as, like from that person.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think it's good to have that.
We decided like 2 kids was the break even thing. Like with 2 kids, if we had only had 2, I probably would have gone back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And once we decided to have 4, it was like the economics don't
You
work anymore.
like staying home too much. You ask her for 2 more.
Well, it was
so
just
you can
like
extend
no, like daycare would have cost way too much, right?
Absolutely.
And we sat down. Like we're both engineers. We both have engineering degrees, so we like spreadsheet. Like if we have 2 more kids, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And one of the things was like I am home until the kids are at least a lot older.
Yeah.
And so like we knew that was going to be that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there are people who are always going to judge you if you do something different.
Right. Yep.
And like you can't do anything about that.
And that's okay. And
yeah.
that's totally okay.
Right. And when I was, so I'm like 30. So my last kid was when I was 32. So imagine me 33 years old, and I got a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Like I got 1 kid in a front carrier and 1 kid in a backpack and 1 kid in the cart and 1 kid walking along.
Yeah.
And I'm just like a dude grocery shopping.
And you were happy doing that.
I mean, it was crazy.
It's crazy.
It was
but,
completely insane. But like I was very happy with my life.
Right.
But there are definitely people
that hates the idea of having to be home with the kids and dealing with them.
They're going to treat you way different than if I was a young woman with 4 young kids grocery shopping in the middle of the day.
You mean like with your kids running around yelling?
No,
my
kids were good.
That's good.
My kids were
That's
good. Like that wasn't an
me
option.
personally, I don't care if you're a man or woman. If your kids are misbehaving, you need to take control of your kids.
So it's a little bit. It's sort of the inverse of when I was building a garage.
Yeah.
And my wife volunteered to run to Home Depot to get some wood for me.
Mm-hmm.
I needed like 2 14-foot 2x4s because 2 of my head were crooked, and I was doing a thing, and the kids were running all over, and she's like, "I'll go get the wood for you."
Yeah.
Cool. So she runs to Home Depot. She knows she's got to get 2 fairly straight 14-foot 2x4s. Mm-hmm. She's there, and she's got like these guys are like, "Let me help you. Let me get that for you."
Oh yeah.
And she's doing all this, and this other guy looks at her. He's got a cast on his arm, and he goes, "Nobody offered to help me get wood at all."
It is what it is.
Right, because it's it's that flip around thing.
Yeah.
And there's pluses and minuses. You ever get on a plane as a single dad with little kids?
Mm-hmm.
Stewardesses love you.
Mm-hmm.
Like they treat you amazingly. So
or
much.
at playground.
Or playgrounds, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get very well. The preschool teachers and the preschool moms loved me.
Yeah.
Like that was great. I was royalty. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think they understand how important it is for, the kids to have their dad
dads to be involved at all was amazing.
Yeah.
And to have a dad be the primary person.
Yeah.
And then all the way through from like preschool all the way up through elementary school. Like I was on the PTO briefly, which was a hot mess.
I can imagine.
And then but teachers would like specifically send me messages, "Can you come on field trips?"
Yeah.
And I would go on field trips and I wouldn't see my kids at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, "All right, so we've got these kids and they just need a male authority figure,
right?
Or the whole day is going to be terrible."
Yeah. What kind of a male authority figure were you? Were you
I would,
really strict? Like were you like really?
No,
if
you I remember being at the Houston Museum of Natural Science and for a band trip.
Yeah.
And these kids thought they were going to get away with something, and like they didn't. And I told them, I'm like, "You go," and I reported them right to the band director, and the band director sat them down. And that was it for the end of their day. And everybody else went, and they fell in line. They were great for the whole rest of the day.
Yeah.
So, but there was a lot of kids. So my kids' elementary school was like 800 kids, and there was 2 men in the building.
Wow.
There was a custodian,
And the
great guy,
principal?
really, really good guy. Nope. And a PE teacher.
Okay.
And the whole rest of the staff, the principal, the vice principal, all the teachers, everyone else in the building was a woman.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but you also had a whole bunch of young men. Like, you had a whole bunch of these kids who didn't have dads at home.
Yep.
And then they didn't have men at school. And they were seldom, if ever, around any male, adult male men.
Like a role model.
Like a role model,
Yeah.
like someone to model behavior and
Yeah.
just sort of like see them and
Yeah.
like there's somebody like me in the world. There's somebody like I'm gonna grow up to
Yeah.
be and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so the teachers were like just be here. Like
Yeah.
just be here and they'll be
Yeah.
so happy that you're here.
No, I appreciate that because like for me, I've always wanted to be involved in everything, with both of my kids, right, at school or whatever, because I felt like they need that male presence, and I'm
Right.
their father. I need to be there. I wanted to teach them that as long as I'm your parents, I'm going to be comfortable doing whatever it is that you need me to do with you. You don't have to go to just your mom or just your dad for something specific. You should be able to go to both of us.
Right.
So yeah, man, I think that's a good thing.
You'd be surprised how much you being around matters to the other kids who only see their moms involved.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you
Yeah.
could see that
Yeah.
when you were
Yes.
around, but
Yeah.
but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I do encourage my friends who have kids, my male friends who have kids, to
Yeah.
be involved for their own kids,
Yeah.
but also because their presence changes the whole atmosphere
Yeah.
in a thing.
Let me
So-
ask you a question before I forget, because this is kind of an important question. I got a bunch of questions for you.
I know
by the
you
way.
are.
I got it, man. I got
you're-
like 2 pages.
You
of
are
questions.
so prepared. It's kind of
Hey,
freaking me out.
You are a special guest, like I say.
No,
I
my
appreciate you.
16-year-old, I told my 16-year-old what I was going to do, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to go relate your experience of being Vietnamese in America?" It's like,
Oh, we get to that. We get to that. Make sure you show him the episode too, because yes,
Okay.
we can be relatable.
yeah,
Even though obviously we have different colored skin and things like that, but both of us are dads, right?
Right.
And both of us are male, and there are things that we can certainly relate to, regardless of the differences that you see on the outside.
Yes.
So but going back to what you were saying about being a father, wanting to be involved with your kids, like who did you have a role model when it comes to that stuff? Like, did you learn from somebody, or was that something that you just sort of like thought of and decide on when you had your kid?
So my dad was always there, but my dad wasn't active in any of the school stuff or any of that. It wasn't his jam for a variety of reasons. It's a generational thing and a personality thing sort of working together at the same point. But interestingly enough, my wife's dad was a preschool teacher. He taught at a preschool high school thing. So it was a high school VOTEC program that ran a preschool and then taught the high school students how to be preschool teachers, basically.
Yeah.
So it was one of those programs. So he was a high school teacher and a preschool teacher at the same time. And he was like, it was just really interesting to see someone in that non-traditional role for me as I met my wife and met him, and he was a really neat guy.
Yeah.
And made me go, yeah, like you can decide to be who you want to be in the world. It was influential for me in my late 20s and 30s, and when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. But a lot of it was just sort of deciding I wanted to try hard. I think like a huge part of being good at anything is like really putting in the effort, like making the decision that you want to be good at this. Yeah.
But why did you want to try hard?
Because it matters. Like I think that we've all had friends in school when we were growing up that didn't have active parents.
Yeah.
And like you can, as a kid, if you have a friend who really doesn't have a parent who's active, you see that and you feel that and you become empathetic for that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a parent that was the opposite of that. Not like really helicoptery and clingy and those sorts of things, but was like there.
Yeah.
And so like I've driven my kids to school every day.
Yeah.
Like literally every day they've gone to school.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we talk on the way to school and I drop them off and I'm the first person they talk to on the way home and we talk to in the car. And it's been that way every single day since they started preschool at 3 years old until they go away to college.
That's really wonderful. That's because that adds a lot of like value in their lives, because being able to have a conversation with you early in the morning,
right?
You know, and then, you know, like after school, because with my daughter, sometime right after school, not so much my son was a boy, and I think with him being a boy, he wasn't about to like, oh, dad, you know, somebody say my hair this and my hair that, you know. But I think for our daughters, and I don't know if that's the case for your kids as well, but like my son, I would have to pry it out of him. But like with, you know, my daughter,
right.
She would just like get in the car and then, Dad, I'm in a bad mood and blah, blah, blah. But it's a good way for her to kind of vent so that she can feel better.
Well, she knows what's happening to her is important.
Yeah.
Like someone else thinks what's happening to her is important.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for kids to not feel important because their parents' lives are really busy, which is true. Like you as a parent, you've got stuff you're dealing with, right? Like you've had a day at work, you've got all the things that you have to deal with as an adult. And it's easy for kids to feel like, oh, like I'm not the important thing in this moment.
Yeah.
And I do think being able to, for at least that 10 minutes after school, be, you know, how are you? How was your day?
Yeah.
Tell me about what's going on.
Yeah.
And like, you know, that I'm important and I matter feeling is really important for kids.
Yeah. Do you ever get mad at your kids?
Oh yeah. Like especially if my kids watch this. So like kids, it would be really nice if I could believe that you have the ability to shape your kids and be like, I will decide how my kids turn out. And I think
we do.
We do to some extent.
Yes, based on the kind of relationship that we have with them, based on, you know, what we aspire to be, you know, in terms of like being their role model and what we're trying to teach them. So yes, in a way we can influence. In a way
we can, but there's other aspects of who they are as people.
Yes,
that are just
totally
fundamental.
Different.
And I always say that to people who have one kid. Like you have one kid and your kid's good, and you think, I'm the best parent in the world. My kid is obviously like this because I am such a great parent.
Yeah.
And you meet anybody who's got 3 or 4 or 5 kids, and they're like, my kids are good, but like it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they have their own personalities.
Yep.
And in a lot of who they are is not a decision you get to make.
That's true. And regardless of the number of kids you have, because I know people out there with one kid, and that one child, man, I'm telling you, is like worth like the headache of 10.
But I think with one kid, like you feel like I must have done something wrong. In my number 2 kid, my son, is, I love him dearly. Yeah. And my wife will tell you the reason we don't get along sometimes is because we're a lot like each other.
How old is he now?
He's 20.
20. Okay. Yep. Yeah.
And I think my mom is also like, yeah, you two are the same. So probably there's a lot of like we're butting heads with each other, but we've always done that.
Yes.
And he's been a difficult person to parent in ways that my other 3 haven't.
Okay.
And so like that's been.
When did that start? Like just when he hits his 20?
It's always. He was a difficult baby. He's been very strong-willed. From the time he could do anything. Yeah. And my other 3 are it's easier to tell them no and have them be like, all right, I see where you're coming from.
Right.
But
this one would debate with you.
Oh my God. Like I keep trying to tell him, I'm like, you should really go into law or something where your sense of arguing is an asset to you instead of being a major pain in the ass. Or sales, where you can like talk people into stuff, or something like that. Like he has a genuine gift for like really wanting to engage with people.
Right.
But when he doesn't have that outlet, otherwise, he will come at you and engage and engage and engage, which is difficult. And we used to say when he was littler, he would go from one person to another person to another person, and he would leave people crying.
Just to make his point.
Yeah, just because like he had to interact with people in order to like really get himself charged up and be happy and do those things. And it didn't particularly matter if he was making someone happy or making someone upset. He just had to like interact with them.
Wow.
And
so in that aspect, is he more like you or is he more like your wife?
My siblings will tell you that was more like me. Like I was.
your sibling have some resentment against you.
My younger sister has been like, "No, you used to do that." And I'm like, "What?" And I think by the time I met my wife, I think I had outgrown some of that and sort of matured and we said we've talked to, especially my daughters have been like, "Oh my God, when do teenage boys outgrow being teenage boys?" And I'm like,
never.
30 if you're lucky.
Never.
Right. But if you're lucky, you can't tell they're teenagers anymore sometime in their 30s. No. And I like to say that by the time I met my wife, it was 22 when I met her, like I had maybe not grown out of it, but I had learned to like segregate it.
Yes.
And put
we learned to kind of like put a lid on it from time to time.
Right.
We just need to be in the right environment and be surrounded by the right people. Right. There it goes. What are you talking about maturity? What?
So that was Sonia, because Sonia's hung out with me doing motorcycles and all that stuff. And she's like, grown-ass men are like the worst. She's like, they're not any better than teenagers.
I tried to explain to Bella that, and she's like, because, Bella, I think she's very mature for her age, something that I totally appreciate. But then she started complaining about teenage boys, and she's like, "Dad, they do this and they do that. It's so immature. Why do they have to use the N-word?" I'm like, "Baby, that's not going to change."
No, they will learn to be better about who they show that to.
Yep. That's the only difference. That's the only difference.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's interesting hearing you talk about your son because, I had a conversation with a really, really good friend of mine not too long ago. He was going through something I think we all have with a boy. Like if you have like a son, right? At some point in his life, especially from when he is a preteen up until maybe he's 23. My son, he's 27 now, so we have a better understanding with each other. Although I did try my best to understand. Like I raised both of my kids to be very independent. I moved out pretty early on, and like since I was young, I wanted to make my own decision. I remember at 13, I was telling my mom, I said, "Do not try to set me up with anybody because I want to pick my own girlfriend." Because, like in Vietnamese tradition, it's always like, "Oh, here's my best friend. And, they have, or he or she has a really nice daughter. And, we want you guys to get together and be friends and get married when you get older." So when my mom started with that idea, I was like, "Mom, nope, nope. I'm picking my own girlfriend. You're not doing that." So I taught both of my kids to be very independent. And so at times when my son and I started to clash a little bit, I had to remind myself, like, this is the person that I raised.
This is your fault.
Yes, this is it's me. I raised him to think independently. I raised him to make his own decision. I raised him to question things that don't make sense to him, right?
Right.
So a friend of mine and we were talking about it because I'm like, and he's like, he's so frustrated with his kids, and he's like, "Man, I'm so done with him." I'm like, he's just like you, right? Because I'm sitting right in front of you two, and the way you guys are interacting, the way that he's justifying, his thoughts, that's how you are.
Right.
And then it took me saying that to him privately for him to be like, yeah, he's like me. But in front of his son, he'd be like, hell no. You know,
Right. It doesn't make it any easier though. Like you still have to deal with it.
Because a part
and-
of you feel like you are the parental figure. Like you have that bit of power over him, and you
Right.
want him to listen to
Well,
you.
and like we said, like you're always trying to be like the version of you that you want your kids to think that you are. And when you see reflected back at you who you kind of really are,
Mm-hmm.
like that
It's
that
never easy, ain't it?
sort of immature pain in the ass person that I kind of am in general in
Yeah.
life, but I don't want my kids to know that I'm that way.
I was gonna say, do you think a big part of it is because like we don't want to? Sometimes like when it comes to like self-reflection, it's hard to see that certain part of you, right? And so when anything or anyone reminds you of that, immediately you kind of want to reject that.
Right, you're like, "Oh, don't be that," because that's me looking back at me.
Yeah.
And I always say, so my dad passed away like a year and a half ago or so, and he and I didn't get along, and there's a long story behind that. That's not just personality
I have a few
wise.
questions about that too. We'll get back to that.
But there are times when my son is just being my son,
Mm-hmm.
and he reminds me of my dad. Like, I'm like, that's exactly like my dad.
Yeah.
Except my son didn't spend much time around my dad at all.
Yeah.
Which means everything about my dad that I see in my son came through me.
Mm.
Like I always say, I see echoes of my dad in my son,
Yeah.
but they had to have come through me because he didn't get them from my dad. He didn't spend hardly any time. Like, he spent very little time
Or
around
could
my
it
dad.
be possible that the older you get, the more you're becoming like your dad? Have you thought about that?
Hopefully, I do think about that a lot because my dad had a lot of flaws.
We all do though.
Yeah, my dad had some substance abuse issues and
Yeah.
some other stuff like that caused him to be less good than he wanted to be as a person.
Yeah.
And so he like when you asked me if there's anything I want to drink tonight, I don't drink.
Sure.
Growing up, my dad was a recovering alcoholic.
Okay.
I don't remember him drinking when I was a kid. He
Mhm.
quit when I was little, and I don't remember it.
Right.
But I remember him being a recovering alcoholic
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
And then after I moved out, well, my younger siblings were still at home, but
Mhm.
after I moved out, he started drinking again, off
Do you
and
know
on.
why?
And
Do you know why?
there was, I don't know exactly what the initial catalyst was. He had started drinking again, and then probably 6 or 8 months later, unrelated to that, my sister was a year younger than me, killed herself. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was tragedy. Like, we could go into the whole tragedy with that, but like that just like it takes a parent and just destroys them, right?
Do you blame your dad for that or no?
No. It didn't have it. It was, so my sister joined the Navy right out of high school,
Mhm.
and she met a guy who was probably not a great guy,
Yeah.
and so she had a sort of a stressful relationship. They had a baby. She had some postpartum depression issues.
Yeah.
The Navy said, "Here, try these, or just take these antidepressants."
Yeah. That's
And like, it's one of those things where like, this is like 25, 26 years ago. And a
Mhm.
lot of the antidepressants they were giving people then, like, they either worked or they made you want to kill yourself.
even now.
Even now, right? And
I don't
so-
think that has changed.
And so she was in a stressful situation. She was enlisted in the Navy. This is a job she can't leave. Like, there's
Mhm.
no way to make your life better because you
Mhm.
have to go to work there. You're in a relationship you don't feel like you can get out of. You have postpartum depression, and you have these antidepressants that are being
Yeah.
negative. So I don't think it had anything to do with my parents. Had nothing to do with how she grew up. It was just sort of a confluence of like everything terrible happened, and she made
Yeah.
a shitty decision.
Well, yeah, it just it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that like because each of us is different.
Right.
We were born different, right?
Right.
Even though we came from the same mom and dad, right?
Right.
Our kids came from us,
Right.
but they're different people.
Yeah.
They might look like us on the outside sometimes. My daughter looks like me, but she's totally different.
Yeah.
In many ways,
So that happened,
Yeah.
and then my dad sort of just fell all the way apart.
Wow.
And
Okay.
he never, I don't think he ever really recovered from that all the way. And he had substance abuse issues
Yeah.
which started before she died.
Right.
Like I found
right.
that out later that he was, my mom told me later. She was like, no,
Yeah.
he was already into it before she died. It's
Right.
just I've talked to people before and they're like, no, like I'll always be an addict. It's just whether or not I can control it on a given day.
Yeah.
And that's who he was. And to
Yeah.
his credit, he kept his shit together.
Right. So you didn't have like
So-
you didn't grow up with him being abusive and then
None of it. Like
shaped.
he was for the time that I was a child and lived with my dad and did all of that, he was a great dad.
That's nice.
I mean,
yeah.
I say a great dad in the fact that like not that he didn't have flaws, but like
He
I
did the
didn't
best he could.
Right. I did not grow up with an addict. I grew up with a recovering addict.
Right. And he
someone
took
who-
care of you guys.
Right.
The way
And someone
that,
who really put a bunch of effort into
Yeah.
being
and that's what matters. You
Right.
know what I mean? Because there's
Right.
no such thing as a perfect dad. You
Right.
know what I mean? Because it's subjective. You know, what's perfect to you might not be perfect to me.
Right. Right.
So,
But he tried hard. Like
yeah.
he tried really hard as long
Yeah.
as he could. And it could be as his kids started to move out of the house, like he didn't have that same drive.
Yeah, I talk about that quite a bit. Like with just like my friends and people that I know, because like I feel very fortunate that I don't have that addictive personality or something in my brain that tells me you need that to
Right.
find the relief. You need that to deal with your stress. You need that to deal with your negative emotions and things like that. I drink. I don't like to get drunk. I love 1 or 2 drinks. You know what I mean? Believe it or not, my dad doesn't drink. My
Yeah,
dad doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't do anything. Me, I did everything. So, but yeah, it's tough, man. I can't imagine having that problem.
No, and I never wanted to. And we
Yeah.
grew up with my parents being very honest about it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
like my dad will tell you like I am an alcoholic. I don't drink right now. That doesn't make me not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And my mom's brother, my uncle, tells me crazy stories about him being an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
her older brother died when I was young from liver failure.
Yeah.
And my dad's biological father died when he was in college from complications with drinking.
Wow.
And so like you go back on both sides.
Yeah, yeah.
And my parents were like, you'll have to make the choice someday whether or not you
Yeah.
want to drink. Heads up, it's historically been a terrible idea
Yeah.
for everyone related to you.
So
to make
at
these
what
decisions.
age did you decide that drinking is not for you?
In high school when my friends started drinking,
Okay.
like I
Do
realized,
you ever have one? Do you ever
no, I've never,
Really?
I have never ever had a drink.
Wow.
Because if you're not-
that's impressive.
If you're gonna make the decision not, and everybody's like, wow, I can't believe you do that. And I'm like, have you ever tried heroin? And they're like, why would I ever try it even once?
It's
And
the
I'm like,
same- yeah, yeah,
like for
get it.
me, like I'm not going to be someone who drinks,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
there is no reason to do it to even try it.
I can respect that. I
So,
can respect that. Yeah.
I mean, not that I haven't had fun with other things recreationally,
I hear you.
but like anybody else, like I talk to my kids, I'm like, you're gonna have to make all these decisions.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to, like people are going to, you're going to college,
mm-hmm.
right? Like you're gonna have an
Peer
opportunity
pressure.
for everything. Like there's nothing you're not gonna have access to in college.
Yeah.
And you're gonna need to look at all of them and make your decisions.
Yeah,
Like make educated, reasonable decisions.
Yeah. And if you go to college and you live in a dorm, I mean, that
Everything's a bit-
pressure is like
Right.
200% more than what it is in your regular day to day at home, right?
Right. Right.
Because that's all your friends want to do.
Right.
I remember when going to college, and I think my first semester, I mean, I was drunk like 80% of the time.
Right.
know, 'cause-
I think it's easy to do. I watched my
Yeah.
freshman year roommate flunked out drinking.
yeah,
Like smart kid.
yeah.
Spent all of his time drinking.
You're
and-
tired. You can't. I mean, it's not. It's not because you're not smart. You're just tired.
No, at 18 years old, you can be so tired that you can't do school.
Yeah,
and that's why
you
when I
stay
talk,
up all night.
I talk to my friends who are in their 40s, and I'm like, how can you still do that? And they're like, I can't.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It takes a lot
Yeah.
out of you. I think my whole life. I mean, I've been drunk many times, but I have only been like really, really drunk to the point where I can't walk 4 times. And the last time I decided not to get that drunk again was when I was in college, still, and I live on the 5th floor, and it's an old building in Milwaukee, and there's no elevator. And we were at a bowling alley that's like 20 minutes away from where we live, right? So we went there, had a bowling game going on, and we were like betting on each frame. So we didn't finish the second game. By the time the first game ended, I was trashed. And then we went to the bar and had some more shots, right? I was throwing up in the car from the bowling alley. I mean, not in the car, like I was hanging off the car.
Right.
I was throwing up there all the way home. And then I had to crawl up, all the way to the 5th floor, and I was basically puking all the way up. And then I woke up the next day. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. So, I mean, I have gotten drunk after that, but not to that, like.
It's good. It's good to be able to make a decision in the moment and be like, I don't want to be different. Like I know as far as I want to go and call it and be good. Like that's a good lesson for life in general, right?
Yeah. Now I have fun though. I mean, like I say, I have fun. I just feel like I'm blessed to not have the addiction.
It's
it's
a horrible disease.
Yeah.
Like the people who truly live with it.
Yeah.
And it does like I watched my dad, who was someone I loved, someone I grew up with.
Yeah.
Like just.
How was your relationship with him, like before he passed away?
I didn't talk to him for like the last 4 or 5 years before he passed away.
Wow.
He was angry.
Okay.
And he was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of said, like, look, get your shit together. Like, I know you can be a different person than you are.
Yeah.
Get your shit together.
Do you think it was fair for you to have to
it was
have that expectation?
It was something I needed to do because I couldn't.
No, I'm saying like for you to expect him to kind of like get his shit together. Like,
I do think it was like I think that's something you can expect of your parents. You can say like, especially someone who I knew had it in him, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you can do this. You've done it before.
Yeah.
Decide it's important.
Yeah.
Get your shit together. Hang out with me and my kids.
Yeah.
And like that was it. Like,
I asked that because like for me, man, my dad and I think if you watch like previous episode, like, and then again, we just got to know each other.
Right.
And most of the time when we meet at the track, we just ride, and we only have like very little time to kind of like chit chat on personal stuff, right?
Right.
But like for me, I didn't talk to my dad for a long time, and because I had certain expectation for him, right? But from time to time, I do question myself, like, was I being fair to him? Because if he didn't have anyone to talk to, if he didn't have anyone to learn from, to be who he needs to be now, or who he needed to be for me, or whatever, during the time that like we didn't speak, right? Was it fair for me? Because maybe he didn't know how to do that.
I think I was waiting for a time where I didn't have to be a father and a son simultaneously while being around him.
I get
like
that.
if I could have just been a son around him, it would have been something I could have dealt with.
Yeah.
But because my kids were always with me,
like
because he lived up in Michigan where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so if I saw him when I was up there with my kids, and it was fine. That's when I finally had to be like, don't be around, because like I can't be a parent and deal with you as my dad at the same time.
Yeah.
And
tough.
so
and you obviously can't be his dad because he won't allow you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how successful you are, how good you are as, a father,
so
right?
So that was the thing. Like I don't like he would say like, no, I'm proud of you, blah blah blah, but he never
listen to you.
He never really understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I think, but this goes back to a relationship with my mom. Like, so both my parents are veterinarians.
Yeah.
But he he was very masculine about it, and he's like, no, I own my own practice and I do this, and
Yeah.
and you can have a practice as long as it's, you're taking care of the kids at the same time.
Yeah.
And he was
Traditional.
it was more traditional. It was a
school of
generational
thought, yeah.
thing, and so I think when I stayed home to take care of kids, like,
I'm sure he felt some kind of way about that. But he
Yeah,
just
like-
didn't tell you.
right, like,
Yeah.
well, but it was obvious.
Yep.
I mean, that was the thing, and I sort of shook it off, and I'm like, I do get it. I get it. It's generational. It's not a decision you ever could have possibly made.
He could have. If
I don't-
if he finds a way to get over his ego.
Right, but
Because
I
that's
don't-
what it takes.
Right, but I don't think he could. Like, I don't think he could have. Just
Yeah.
how the world he was raised in,
Yeah.
who he was as a person because of the world he was raised in, and what he thought he had to do and be as a man in the world.
Do you really think the world that we are living in now is that much different
think
when it
it's
comes to male's ego, though?
Radically different.
You think so?
I do. When I look at,
Yeah.
but also I see the world. I have a hard time seeing my world. I see my parents' world, the
Mhm.
world I grew up in, which was, I grew up in a small town in West Michigan that was like, all white people. It was a farming
I have
community.
a question for you about that.
Okay.
We get
But-
there, yeah.
And so like it was very monolithic. Like everybody went to the same 3 churches.
Yeah.
I graduated with 53 people in my high school class.
Wow.
And so like the world
That's
was,
small, huh?
yeah, the world was very, very traditional,
Yeah.
like the same way it had been for 100 years before that.
Yeah.
I mean, not much different at all. And so like I can see, I was raised very similar to how, like, in a world that was very similar to the world my dad was raised in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the world my kids are in is really different. If you go hang out with high school kids right now,
Mm-hmm.
their acceptance of each other in the world is wildly different than when I was
To
growing
a
up.
certain extent, yes. To a certain extent.
Yeah,
yes.
and like hugely. Like the acceptance of people being different in themselves
Yeah, yeah.
is way, way different.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that- and
yeah,
that-
I guess you're right because I guess I was thinking of my personal experience where because I grew up in the city almost, so it's
Okay.
a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, and so even though you and I are fairly close in age,
Mhm.
you and I would have I grew up like 1950s white America.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like that's 100% how it was.
Yeah.
And I know that you didn't because
Yeah.
like your upbringing from what I know is like even after you came to the States is
Mhm.
different.
Yeah. A big part of that because I made a choice too. You know, I don't want to throw my mom and dad under the bus, but you know, like growing up, they had very traditional expectations. Like what kind of friend, like what kind of people you should be friend with. Don't be friend with those people. They're not educated enough. Don't be friends with, you know, that kind of people because of their ethnic background. So I went through all that too.
And
You
see,
know what I mean?
yes, but see for me that was all like theoretical because there weren't different people.
No, just on the outside. Just on the outside.
Yeah, but like we were all
yeah, I mean,
we
for
were
you guys-
all a bunch of white Christian.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess they
conservative
didn't have
people.
to say anything because
Yeah, there weren't. It wasn't like don't hang out with those people because we're all the same.
right. we got.
Yeah,
They feel totally secure that ain't nobody's gonna come into this little circle, so we really don't need to talk about
we don't
that.
need to. Like everything was just sort of a theoretical idea, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Of course, don't be racist. I mean, keeping in mind,
But you
there
have no
are
idea what it means to be racist
Right,
because
it
you
w-
have only been around the people that are exactly like you.
Everything was theoretical.
Yeah, and that's what. Okay, so I do have a question
Okay.
for you. Like, so one of my questions for you, because we've known each other for quite some time, but I never got to really, know who you are and your upbringing and stuff. So one of my questions is like, what was it like for you to grow up in Michigan? Because I know that for a fact that you moved here from Michigan,
Right.
right? And you still go back to Michigan,
Yep.
in the summertime and whatnot. But what was it like? So you have already started talking about that, but like, so you surrounded by mostly white people, Caucasian.
All white people.
Oh, okay, all white people. So when was your first time, like coming across someone who's different than you, like a person of different color, a person of different culture? Like, what was that like?
So the probably the first time that really happened is when I went to college, and I went to college at Michigan Tech, which is in the Upper Peninsula.
Okay.
But there was a sizable minority of students who are especially Indian and Pakistani and people who were, it was an engineering school. So you had like anybody whose parents said like, you're going to go be an engineer.
Yeah.
Which is pushed a lot in some of those cultures.
Yeah.
Came to Michigan Tech and they were engineers.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of people that came over from India and from Pakistan and did that. And so that was the first time I had to learn to listen to accents.
Okay.
So it wasn't, and I still have trouble listening to some people's accents that
some people's accent be thick.
No, but
I mean,
people who speak fine, like their English is fine.
Yeah.
But I can't hear it because it's not a tonal structure that I grew up with. And so like people be like, no, I'm trying to speak better. I'm like, you're doing fine. I can't hear you, and that's my fault.
Yeah.
And my kids are amazing.
Yeah.
Like the ability, my kids' ability to listen through accents is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, because they've been exposed to it.
Because they've been
that
exposed
part
to
of their
it.
brain is open.
They've been exposed to different versions of spoken English.
Yeah.
And so they can hear all of it.
Yeah.
That's one of the nice things about Houston is it's probably one of the most diverse cities in the U.S.
Yeah.
So
It's becoming to be.
Well, it's been that way for a long time.
It has been. It was clumpier before. Like depending on where you lived.
Yeah.
Like you could not.
Well, okay, diversity. Like to me, my definition of diversity is when everybody's living together, not when you have a hub of this one specific demographic here and then one specific of demographic, in another place, right? Diversity is like, okay, when you open your front door, you look to your left door neighbor is, Caucasian, black, or whatever, and then this one is Hispanic.
Right.
To me, that's diversity. Right, not when you're like separated.
It's getting to be more like that.
Yeah, it's becoming
than
more
it was
like
even
that.
when we moved here 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But even when we moved to Houston, there were Southern accents I couldn't understand.
Oh,
people like I'd go to get my car inspected, and a like crusty old white dude would come and start talking to me, and I'm like, shit.
Yeah, accent is a funny thing because like. For us too, Vietnam is a very small country, but there are 3 different types of accent, right?
Okay.
The southern accent, the northern accent. The northern accent, I would compare that to like British, where it's like proper English, right?
Okay.
And then you got that harsh, rough, like version of it in the South Vietnam, right? And then the people in the central, it's like they're speaking a whole new different language here. They say, like they can when they write, it's the same thing, but when they speak, I'm like, why do you put that on there? Like I don't understand that. Like what accent mark is that? You know what I mean?
So when people from different parts of Vietnam speak English, can you tell in their accent which part of Vietnam they are?
Interestingly, no, because they learn how to speak English the way it's supposed to be spoken.
Okay.
So they pronounce it, you know what I mean?
So that accent doesn't come
That
through.
accent doesn't come out. But when they start speaking Vietnamese, I'm like, what? Especially the people from like central Vietnam.
Okay.
It's really, really difficult to understand them. Like it's like a whole different language, man. Yeah, so, we good. You good? I'm sorry, I forgot to pour you a drink. And Seth, I forgot to offer you some fruits. I prepared some fruits. You should have some fruits, Seth.
I was going to grab a raspberry.
You grab whatever you want. That whole plate is yours. Can I get you a drink now?
That's all right. I'll stick to my.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's working.
He yelled at me for drinking the other day. He's like, you should wait till Friday to drink. I'm like, hey, it's Wednesday. I need a drink too.
You're a grown ass man. You can do what you need to do.
So, that's cool. So, like, when was your first time having developing like a friendship with someone, a non-white person, a Vietnamese person? Especially
a Vietnamese person,
non-white first, and then Vietnamese.
Not non-white. I had a good friend of mine in college who was Iranian.
Okay.
He was first generation American. His parents had come over from Iran in the late 70s, and so he had like culturally he felt like a misplaced Iranian kid. because his parents were like were pretty traditional, like raised him to feel like he was Iranian.
Yes.
And
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 he
he
couldn't
was-
be that in school.
right, and he was between those two cultures.
Mhm.
And so he was my first friend that was like from like an obviously different background
Yeah.
that we got to be friends with.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, different people through college. Like once you've broken through that, like
Mhm.
I can't even tell you who was different in college, because then you're like friends mix
Yeah.
past that.
So like with that friendship, like what did you have like that? Did you ever have that moment where you're like, oh, that's interesting? Is that how you guys do things?
Not really, because he was raised in Michigan, so like
Okay.
he was raised like he could code switch and be like a white kid
Okay.
when he needed to.
Okay.
It was just like when you really got talking to him,
Mm-hmm.
he was like, it's weird being in two cultures.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we talked about some of that because,
Yeah.
you know, his parents, you know, especially when he went away to school, his
Mhm.
parents still wanted him to be like conform to their expectations of having an Iranian son.
Mhm.
And he was like, but that's
That's
I don't,
not-
I don't know if that's he didn't know if that's who he was.
You can't carry on that identity if you want to function in a U.S. society, right? I mean,
right, and that's-
basically that's what it is, because you lose your identity, or you have to find that one identity that you need to be able to be that normal functional member of
Right,
know,
and-
the U.S.
And I've
yeah.
talked to that with a bunch of my friends who are in that like first and a half generation. So
Yeah.
like they came over when they were little, so like they
Mhm.
like we said, they're that bridge generation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, your parents are from Ecuador or Vietnam
Mhm.
or wherever, and you're in between, but your kids are American.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter what they look like.
Yeah.
Those are little American kids, and they're running around doing TikTok videos,
Yeah.
and they're gonna be as American as every other kid, regardless of their skin color.
Yep.
And the pull between their parents who still are like, how can you raise tiny little American kids?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't have like that's
Yeah, they
who are.
criticize you in a sense. They make you feel like you're not being a good, parent.
Right.
Because you're not teaching your kids all of the old traditions, but they don't understand that the old traditions don't work here.
Right.
I mean, we don't need to bow to people because that's going to make you look strange, and the kids is going to get judged and they might
Right.
get bullied and things like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? They don't understand that,
Right.
And I think another big thing is that they don't understand that we don't live in the same society where, like in Vietnam, everybody's the same. Everybody look the same.
Oh, because you're all Vietnamese.
We're all
Right.
Vietnamese.
Right.
Like here, people, all they need is, one reason to make fun of you. To
Right.
add to that, stereotypes that they already have about you. You know
Right.
what I mean? So like growing up here as a kid, you deal with a lot.
Yeah.
You deal with a lot. Like for me, like at some point in my life, I told my kids like I refused to speak Vietnamese for like a good, I think, 7 years.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I completely abandoned my Vietnamese identity.
Okay.
Yeah, because like I just got tired of not feeling like I'm one of the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because to me, I'm like I'm just like everybody else. I
Right.
don't want to be different. So I want people to accept me. I want people to understand me when I talk. I want
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah, my parents didn't like that. Oh, why
I
do you
get-
dress like this? Why? Because they want you to dress a certain way, and
Right.
like Vietnamese culture, they don't. So the way they separate the quote unquote elite class or the educated class and the blue collar is how you dress, how you carry yourself, right?
Okay.
So if you are a scholar, if you are someone who's gonna, become that within that elite class, you have to wear your hair a certain way. I wanted my hair, like I wanted to shave my head since I was young, either shave or have it long. And
Okay.
I would go get my hair braided. My mom hated that because she's like, you should comb your hair to the right. You should keep your hair this length and you should comb it to the right because it looks proper. I'm like, I don't care for that hair. I hated it.
Right.
And she and I used to, get into argument all the time about that.
Right.
And again, a part of it was I was into sports. So guess what? Most of the kids I was around, I wanted to be like them.
Right.
So if I didn't come, so if I had to have that hairstyle, if I had to dress the way that my mom wanted me to dress, I wouldn't be accepted by
Right.
my peers, So
I thought of this when I listened to most of the episode you had with Bella,
yeah,
and she made a roundabout was making a point that like kids don't want to be good adults. Kids want to be cool kids.
yeah,
And that usually means they look terrible to adults, but that's fine. They
Yeah.
don't care.
yeah.
They want to be cool to their peers.
You remember the Jenko jeans?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I had those. My dad, I bought. So my dad, he was so like traditional and he was so disciplined, and I got into an argument with him one time, and he was like, "As long as you're in my house, you're gonna wear what I tell you to wear," and I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." Oh, and then he said, and especially when I pay for your clothes, and I say, "Okay, that's fine." I went out and I got a job. I started cleaning people's yard for money because I was like, screw this. I'm going to wear what I want to wear, and I'm going to buy my own clothes, so you don't have a reason to tell me that I have to wear what you buy me, right? So I worked all weekend. I think I made like $60. I went out. I bought 2 pair of jeans, the Jinko jeans.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a grown man now, and I wear size 29. I remember I bought those 2 jeans, and they were 32.
They were hanging off you.
Yeah. I came home, and then I put 1 pair on. I was walking around in front of him, all proud. I'm like, hey, it's my own money. I paid for this. You can't do nothing about it, right? I woke up the next morning. They were cut in half. So, yeah.
That's a dad thing, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. And I think, like, for me being a father, I try to remind myself that my kids, whatever that they're going through, all of the emotions, all of the challenges that they're facing right now, are the same,
Right.
as
Right.
me when I was going through that period on my own. Yeah, so I think that helped.
It does, and
Yeah.
that's part of the like trying,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, and your dad was trying in his own way. Like he
wanted me to look proper. He didn't want
Right.
people to judge me. But I'm like, dude, you're not in Vietnam anymore. No Vietnamese person is gonna judge me because look around. I mean, we have like 3 Vietnamese family in the school. Like, who's
Right.
gonna judge us? So yeah. Man, so that takes me to the next question I have for you then.
Okay.
How do you connect with your kids? Other than, besides, riding motorcycle, besides, talking to them, from, taking them to school and picking them up from school, like how do you connect with your kids?
So I've sort of had a connection with each of my kids in their own way versus personality. My oldest daughter is curious and wants to learn things and has always been like that. So since a very young age, she learned to read at a very young age. And by the time she was in kindergarten, she was reading like Harry Potter books, like 300-page books in kindergarten. And the teachers were like, "Oh, cute. She's carrying that around."
Yeah.
We're like, "No, she's reading that."
Wow.
And this was, so this was 22 years ago, and there wasn't as much kids fiction as there was now. Like Harry Potter really changed the world as far as kids fiction went. And so, it exploded. And now if you're like 5, 6, 7 years old, like you can find a bunch of books to read. You couldn't, like, it was much, much harder then.
Yeah.
And so she and I have always connected through, like, she would ask me questions and I would give her the long answer about everything.
Yeah.
And so she was curious, and so she and I still talk about stuff. She's just finishing up nursing school right now.
Nice.
And now it's more like me asking her, like what's going on? Like, tell me about like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so we have always connected through words and academically and sort of like curiosity about the world.
Okay.
Her younger brother, my number 2, has been more of a challenge, but I just tried to be a good dad to him.
Yeah.
Like, and I will say that if I'm not sure that I was the right person to parent him, if that makes sense.
That's interesting.
Interesting. I think he would have thrived under a more traditional macho male, grow up and be a man, go shoot something type of environment, which is not who I am.
Yeah.
And I think if he had been in one of those environments, it would have been easier for him to find himself. And I have like mixed feelings about that because like I can't be someone who I'm not.
Right.
And
But at the same time, he can get lost in that too, right?
he could, but sometimes you like the trope for that is when you get like a young man who's like sensitive and quiet, and his dad is the super macho man.
Yeah.
And he can't be the person his dad wants to be. And my son and I are a little bit opposite of that. And even though like you see me riding motorcycles and doing like manly stuff, like I am much more of the sensitive, quiet, like
you're a chill person.
I'm a very
person.
chill, quiet person.
You.
And that's who I am.
Yeah.
And so like we're sort of backwards from that old trope. So I will say I tried really hard with my son, and I'm not sure. Like I still talk to him once a week, even when we don't get along. I still talk to him.
Yeah.
Talk to him once a week. And then Sonia, she's a firecracker. She's always been.
She's just a version of you, isn't she?
Yeah, like right. She's very much an engineer in a way that her older sister isn't.
Yeah.
Like she's like very exact
your
about
twin.
things. Yeah, and she's in once. And she used to hang out with me, and we used to do a bunch of stuff together. But once I started motorcycles, she was just like, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that with you. We're going to do that thing. And so that's been, the last 5 years. And she just turned 18. So from the time she was 13 to 18, we've been hanging out doing that.
Yeah.
And then my younger son, I will say he and I are, personality-wise, we're much more alike. He's a quieter, more sensitive, more cerebral person than his older brother is. But also I've made an effort to be interested in what he's interested in rather than the other way around.
Right.
So when I say he's a quieter, more sensitive, cerebral person, the flip side of that is he is like got hugely into airsoft.
Okay.
So like fake
you do
guns,
that with him?
Yeah, and like I fundamentally don't like it. I grew up hunting.
Yeah.
And so like guns were like I learned old school gun safety. You only point a gun at something you want to kill.
Yeah.
Like very guns are locked up, very specific gun safety. And he's like, cool, let's go shoot each other.
It's fun though. We should get together and do that sometimes.
It took me a while to really be comfortable with it, but I was like, but it's important to him. And I have two choices here. I could just be like, okay, go do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Or I can try to get over it, and I can try to understand it with you. And so that was me really making an effort to be like, all right, I'm going to do this thing, even though it's not really the thing I want to do. Because it's important to you.
Right.
And we did that. And then oddly, he came around to, in college, I rock climbed. Like that was my thing. I was a rock climber for like 6 years. That's what I did.
You still do that or no?
Well, I do now. But when I moved to Houston, there was only like one climbing gym in Houston.
What's the name of that place?
I don't even know if it's around anymore. It was downtown, and I live northeast in town.
They have a second location if that's the same place. There's a place downtown.
It could be, but it was expensive.
Yeah,
it was expensive.
Yeah.
It was far away, and there's no like rocks in Texas. There is like you could go to Enchanted Rock. There's a few places you could climb, but like realistically, like moving to Houston meant I was done climbing, and so this thing that had been a really important part of me went away.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me.
Yeah.
And so, but my kids grew up with stories of me climbing.
Yeah.
In college, all through college. Rock climbing, ice climbing, like it was my thing. And when Sonia went to college this last year, there's a climbing gym on campus, and she started doing that. And she came home from college, and she was like, come to the climbing gym with me.
Nice. Yeah.
And I was like, fine. So
fingers don't feel the same no more.
Yeah. So there's one in spring, and she was like, come to the climbing gym. And I went to the climbing gym in spring, and I was like, all right, I actually do Like I love the movement aspect of it. The same thing, the same reason when I got on a motorcycle and I was like, yes, I need to do this. There's a part of my brain that gets tickled with movement.
Yes.
I'm not a graceful person at all.
Yeah.
Like I can't dance. Like I run into walls just because
It's
don't
the
have
calculation of things.
Yeah, and so like when I can move well, when I say like there's only a few things I do where I feel beautiful, and like motorcycle riding, when I'm doing it well,
Yeah.
is one of the very few times where I'm like I feel like dancers must feel.
Yeah.
Like ballerinas feel, like those people that float through the world and glide and
It
feel
feels natural.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and when I'm good on a motorcycle, I feel like that. And when I started climbing again, like I could feel when I climbed in college, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Like when you're moving well, it feels good, and you feel good, and it makes my brain feel good. And so I started back to doing that about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And then 8 months ago, my son said, "Hey, I think I kind of want to try that."
Yeah.
And so he started climbing with me.
Nice.
And
nice.
so
that's how you guys connect now.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like I try to make sure that I do things with my kids.
Yeah.
Like
the things that
do
they like, right?
something that's important to them.
Yeah.
Like it's just so happens Sonia does something that's also important to me.
Yeah.
But I try to make sure like this is your thing that's important to you, and I want to be active in that. And I think the only person I really failed at that with is my older son. He was into video games, and which is not like I can't do video games.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I would just sit and watch. My son, he's into video games. I sit and, even though I taught him how to play game, but then it got to the point, I was like you playing too much game now.
Right.
Dude,
Right.
let's go do something. You
Right.
know what I mean? So I kind of dabble into everything. I play video games, you know what I mean? Like I do like a lot of physical activities, you know. So I make sure I do that. I do all those things. I introduce my kids, you know, to all those things.
And
But
I tried to get my son to do mountain biking, and he did sort of ride motorcycles with us for about 6 months. And then he was like, "Meh, not my jam." And I'm like, "Cool, like, if you don't want to do it, that's fine."
Yeah.
And so like
So he's into shooting and stuff, like guns?
I think he would have been in the right circumstances.
Okay.
It's some in interest that he has.
But he's not home right now, is he?
He's not
still?
home. No, he's away trying to do college,
Right.
to more or less extent, which is
What's he going to school for?
engineering, kind of. He's not
Okay.
going to school for anything right now. He stopped going to school this semester to kind of get his shit together.
It's fine. It's fine.
Idiot. Well, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think he thinks it's fine right now. Like he's not okay not doing as well as he wants to.
But that's a learning process for him, and
It is,
that
and-
lesson right there is gonna be a valuable one for him for the rest of his life.
Well,
And it's gonna change how he makes his decision moving forward. Sometimes you have to have disappointment in yourself.
right.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a whole process. But
Yeah.
So he graduated high school a year early, and he was young for his grade. So he actually graduated high school at 16 years old after 3 years of high school during COVID. Went to college that next fall during COVID when you couldn't do anything in person.
Yeah.
And I told you, like, he interacts with people, right? Like, that's his thing.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. And then, so like he couldn't, like he admitted, like he got most of the way through the first semester and was like, I can't do school. And we're like, fine, come home, it's fine.
Yeah.
And we're like, what do you want to do? And he goes, I think I want to join the Air Force.
Yeah.
And so he went through the process of deciding he wanted to join the Air Force and doing that. And it took him about a year to get in. And then a week before finishing basic training, he dislocated his shoulder. And they sent him home.
Yeah.
And that was
And
it.
he lost interest after that.
No, he actually came out of the Air Force with a huge amount of motivation. He was like, all right, I got to see like weird attack drones and crazy engineering things that the Air Force did.
Yeah.
I want to go back to school for engineering
Oh, okay.
and learn to do these things.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he had.
But he don't want to be enlisted for in the Air
he
Force anymore.
He can't be. The Air Force told him to go home. Like they medicaled him out.
Oh wow, that sucks.
It does suck. Like that was, And
That's
and
kinda
it's
dumb though. Just a dislocated shoulder.
well, he had a hit when he was a kid. The problem was when he was a kid, he dislocated his shoulder a couple times, and we
Oh.
took him into the doctor to
Uh-huh.
see like what can you do, because my wife's dad has the same thing. It's just a congenital shoulder
Okay.
issue where they're kind of floppy, but there's some strength training you can do, and there's some movement patterns you can do to reduce the likelihood
Right,
you can do
right.
that. So he had a medical history of shoulder
Oh,
problems.
so it's a liability for the Air
Right.
Force then. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was just it
And-
wasn't just a one-time, incident.
Right, and he's kind of like he's talked to me in moments, and he's like super pissed off that we ever
Yeah.
brought him in, because if he didn't have a history of that,
Mhm.
and he just like because things happen to people and whatever, and then they heal and they go back on with their careers,
Yeah.
but because he had a history of it, and he's like, if you hadn't brought me to the doctor, I wouldn't have gotten kicked out of the Air Force. And I'm like, yeah, but we were being good parents, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
it's true.
like we were trying.
Yeah.
Like in that moment when you were 13, 14 years old, we were trying to make sure that you lived a healthy life with
Yeah.
healthy shoulders
and
for the rest of your
and
life.
this is the kid that told you that you won't that kind of make fun of you a little bit about coming on the podcast today.
No, that's my 16-year-old. My
Oh, okay.
16-year-old, sharp as a whip. He's he's fun.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like you got to put on different hats to connect to the kids, right?
Yeah, I
because
think-
each of them requires something different from you.
I think all parents do.
Good
Like
parent.
rather than
Good parent.
yeah, like you can try to make your kids conform to you,
Yeah.
or you can look at who your kids are as people
Yeah.
and parent within that
Yeah.
sphere.
Yeah. 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 And a big part of it, you got to be confident in what you're teaching them, right? My belief is that I look at myself as if I'm a school, right? I'm gonna require you to go to school for 4 years if you want that degree. But after that, you can't stay here no more. You got to go out there and apply the knowledge that I gave you, right? And I have to have the confidence that what I gave you is good enough for you to utilize, to make something or to accomplish whatever it is you set out to accomplish, right? Because I can't keep on holding you. Because that's, to me, that's me telling myself that I'm not confident with what I taught you.
And that's I haven't gotten all the way to that point yet. My oldest daughter is just graduating in this next spring.
Mm-hmm.
So she's been in school the whole time. And so like her first I'm going to go be a grown-up thing
Yeah.
happens this spring and into the summer, and she's going to go get her nursing license and go off into
Yeah.
the world and
Yeah.
take care of people. And she's an amazingly competent young woman, responsible. I don't have worries about her except like you do about kids in general, right?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
hope they do well.
Yeah.
And my son, I'm like, you don't have to go to college. That's fine. But if you're not going to go to college, you got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't just sit around and be not in college.
Yeah. Is he working?
He's not right now because the job he had was through the school.
Mhm.
And when he's not a student, he can't have that job. And he's trying to sort his stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he doesn't want to move back home, which is fine
That's
because
fine,
he's a difficult young man to live with.
maybe you're just a difficult old person
And I'm-
to live with.
Right. But that's my house, and I
It
live
ain't
there.
on him,
I'm not
Seth.
leaving. That's my house.
This is true. Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm not quite at the point where, like I like you say, like I taught my kids to be independent. I taught my
Yeah.
kids to have knowledge about the world.
Yeah.
I think I've given them all the tools they need to succeed,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know yet because nobody's actually done it yet. They've succeeded in.
So far, they're still young.
They are still
Except
young.
for
That's-
your first,
right,
your
right. My daughter
your
is
first
22
daughter.
and,
Yeah,
and is
she's-
about ready to go. But
But even so, 22 is
At
pretty
20
young.
yeah, you can make some mistakes at 22.
Yeah, because I think scientifically speaking, we're not fully developed until we're like 25, 26,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I think for them at least, I think both of, at least with, it sounds like, well, except for the really really young one where he's still home.
Right.
But the other three children, I think they're very successful in their own way, because at least for your son, as much as you don't agree or as much as you don't see what he's doing right now, the decision for him to be on his own, I think that's a grown-up decision.
Right.
and obviously your daughter, I mean, things is going smoothly for her the way she, wants, right?
Right.
Finishing school. And Sonia, at 18, she's already in college. So I
Right.
think they are all successful in their own way. Not by
But they're not-
your
They're
expectations.
not successful adults yet.
Not yet.
That's the thing,
Yes.
because
Yes.
kids have such a long.
Yes.
In we did this, like, if you went to high school, went to college, like, I realize now, even though at 19, 20 years old in college, I was like, I'm a grown-ass man. Like, I wasn't.
We started saying that, I think, when we were like 16. And then
Right.
we turned 21 and we like, no, we're a little grown. I think we like to say that we're grown until after we turn 25. Then we look back, because when you become fully mature is when you can look back and be like, why the hell was I saying that I was grown when really I wasn't?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I came to that realization, I think, when I was like 27. And I look back, and I'm like, man, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, So I count my blessing, because I had my son when I was like right after I turned 20.
Okay.
And at that time, man, nobody could tell me nothing. I mean, I had my own thing going on. I mean, I started working when I was like 16, So
Right.
I was making my own money, not much, but I was making my own money. I can, pay for my own stuff. And I had my son, so I'm like, I'm looking around. I'm like, you guys can tell me a lot of stuff, but who are you? You're not 20, you're not 21, you're not raising a kid right now.
Right.
And then I got to be 27, 28. I think the closer I got to be, 30, that's when I'm like, man, I didn't know shit.
Right.
Not as much as I would like to think at that time.
and that's the thing. Like, as a parent right now, I'm like, oh my God, are they gonna pull it off?
They will.
I think they will.
They will.
I think it'll be fine. But that's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
And because all my kids are in, a 6-year time period, they're
Yeah.
almost all doing it
They
at the
pull
same
it off
time.
in their own way.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
But, so my daughter's graduating college at the same time my youngest son, who's 16, is going off to the same early college program that Sonia's going to.
Yeah.
So, like, all my kids are going to be out of the house starting next fall.
Nice.
And
Are you
just-
excited about that?
I'm excited and terrified because
Yeah.
I've kind of never been a grown-up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went to college, and I finished college at 24. I went to college for 6 years, got 2
Yeah.
degrees. And then by
Did
the
you say 2?
2 degrees, I have
Wow.
a bachelor's degree in geological engineering
Mhm.
and geophysics.
Wow.
So I earned 2 bachelor's degrees,
Okay.
which is its whole
At the same time?
at the same time. Yeah, it was.
Wow, you were a smart dude.
I
mean,
love-
you are
I-
still a smart dude, I'm sure. Not word.
No, I loved school. I genuinely loved school.
Yeah.
And had I not met my wife and decided to come to Houston with her, I was accepted to a couple different graduate schools to do grad work and do some neat
like
stuff.
research
Yeah,
projects.
yeah, and I was doing that. I was doing that as an undergraduate. Like
Yeah.
I was publishing research as an undergraduate.
Nice,
like I
nice.
loved academia.
So you had you had planned to be like a postdoc and then go
That's
a
that's
little
probably what I would have done. And
cool.
and my wife got a job in Houston.
Yeah. Sure, she's from Houston.
No, she's from Michigan, but
Mm.
but an oil company came to campus and they hired her.
Nice.
And I was like, like I can always go back. I can always go back to school. Going back to school is not a big deal, especially
Yeah.
if I go work for 2 years and then go back and get a master's degree.
Yeah.
But like, I really like her.
Yeah.
And
I'm
if I
glad
send
you
her
do.
off into the world without me, like I'm not gonna get another chance with her.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, I'll just move to Houston
it
with
was
her.
meant to be, man.
Yeah, it's worked out very well.
Like I'm a firm believer in that. Like sometimes we question our decision, right? But looking back, I think I mentioned this in one of the earlier episodes. Like I have no regrets because like I feel like everything that happened for a reason, and everything that happened is is why I'm here today.
Right.
As the person that I am with the kind of perspective that I have. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. it's
Yeah, like
cool.
I don't really believe in fate. I believe we're all swimming around in a sea of chaos that we don't have. There's There's things we have control over, and
But
there's
then you
things we
didn't have
don't
to
have
swim
control.
next to your wife. I mean, you could.
Yeah, but I wanted to.
Exactly.
Right,
So
like
that's
like
great.
those are the those are the choices you make within chaos, right? Like you can choose, like you have certain directions
And
to
you don't think that
choose.
has anything to do with fate?
No, I think we make choices within the realm of the things that we can't make choices about. Like the reason I met my wife when I did is because I was actually in Canada doing a year abroad in Canada, which is like the lamest way to do a year abroad, is to go to Canada for school.
Which part of Canada, though?
Toronto.
Oh yeah,
I'm
that's
the
lame.
only
Yeah,
person
yeah.
who
the
ever.
other part. Where,
I am the only person who ever went south to go to school in Canada, because
Yeah.
where I was in Michigan was actually like 300 miles north of Toronto.
Yeah.
And so I went south to Toronto to go to school.
Yeah,
It's the weirdest thing
You're
ever.
right there. Yeah.
But I went there because there was the professor who was the best in the world at a particular subject was there. And there was another professor who was like top 2 or 3 in the world at an adjacent subject.
Wow.
And so I was going to have an opportunity to take graduate school classes from these people who were literally the best in the world at the thing that they were
Were
doing.
they Canadian?
They were Canadian, yeah.
Wow.
And so like it was an opportunity to go learn under
from
these
the best.
learn under these 2 professors briefly. But that fall my sister passed away.
Yeah.
And at the time, my younger sister was going to Michigan Tech, where I had been going to school.
Yeah.
And so the right thing to do was to finish up the first semester in Canada and go back to Michigan, be close to my sister, help her through it. And so I literally met my wife the day I walked back into a class called electromagnetic geophysics.
Okay.
There were 3, I was the 4th student in the class. There was 3 other students there, and they were sitting in the front, and there was a gap between her and one of the other students, and I sat down next to her.
Nice.
And that's how I met my wife.
Okay.
So like I met her directly because there was another tragedy in my life that I deeply wish didn't happen.
It was fate.
It's
It
but
was
it's
fate.
it's chaos. like life, because there's a whole bunch of things that I didn't have control over. Like I didn't have control.
And that's what the things that you have. See, I believe that yes, the things that you have no control over, they happen. Oh, the things that you have no control over is because it's fate. It has to do with fate. But anyway, we can agree to disagree on that one, I guess. I kind of want to circle back on part, like the second part of one of the questions that I had for you was when I asked you about your first time, meeting like a non-white person, and then I say, when was your first time meeting a Vietnamese person? Because this is a VietMenClub, right? So right. Is my obligation to find out, your experience with Vietnamese person, Vietnamese men, especially. Like, how do you meet, and what was your perception of?
So like the first Vietnamese people I ever. And my wife asked me this question before here, and I said, I said, like growing up, I knew more people who fought in the Vietnam War than I knew people who were Vietnamese.
Yeah. Because
that's just how the world was, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Because that was the age that my dad was.
Yeah.
My dad didn't, but a bunch of his friends had.
Yes.
So when we moved to Houston, my wife's first job, she was a geologist at a small oil company.
Yeah.
And she had 2 women who worked for her who were geotechs.
Okay.
So they did sort of the technical bookkeeping, a whole bunch of the other stuff that you do in the oil industry, especially at that time.
Yeah.
And both of them were women from Vietnam.
Okay.
Who had come over in the early 80s.
Okay. That's after the war.
After the war. Yep. They had come over after the war in completely different ways, but they had met each other through the Vietnamese community in Houston, and they both worked there. And my wife called them my tiny Vietnamese geotechs, and they were both like 4'10", 4'11", wonderful women. I cooked 2 days ago. I cooked rice in the rice cooker they gave my wife when because my wife was saying something and they were like, "You don't have a rice cooker?" And I was like, "We grew up in the Midwest. We don't have." And they're like, "You have to have this." So we have this vintage rice cooker that was one of their spare rice cookers, and they like brought it to work, and they were like, "You have to have a rice cooker."
Yeah.
And I still have that in my cabinet, and I used it the other day.
Still works.
Still works. It's good.
Nice.
It's just a very simple one. You push cook, and
Yeah.
it goes bing when it's done, and it makes great rice. And so we became friends with them, and then because of where we've lived in Houston, I haven't really had a whole lot of other connection to the Vietnamese community until you guys started coming to the Track Ride Motorcycles.
Yeah.
And then I met you guys through that.
I think you met Viet first.
I met Viet first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because he's friendly and wants to meet everybody.
He can be friendly at times if he chooses to be.
Well, he did when he was learning to ride, learning to ride 65s.
Because
he was
right. That's when he.
So I met him his first or second time. He went to Katy and he came out with a 65, and he was bad at it.
Yeah.
Like most people are when they start riding 65s, right?
Yeah.
You're like, because he'd done all that racing in California.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm good at motorcycles.
It's a different bike. It's a different kind of bike. It's two-stroke. The power band is a little different, right?
Right.
Yeah. The first time I jumped on a dirt bike, I actually did a loop because I love doing wheelies.
You're good.
And I got on my friend's two-stroke. It was a 250.
Oh God.
And then I'm like, I got this. And luckily, it was on grass, right?
Okay.
I put in the second gear, cracked that throttle, and that power band is not the same.
Right.
Like in a regular motorcycle, the 4-stroke one, the power band is more linear, right?
Right.
I got that thing in second gear. I cracked that, and I'm like, there's nothing. Crack it a little bit. I went back. That was my first experience with the 2-stroke.
So Viet was bad. The first time he was out at Katy, and Sonia's out there riding whatever the 70 at that time, and I was just on an XR100.
Yeah.
And Viet knew that he should be faster than me.
Yeah.
We're on crappy Honda 4-strokes, and he was slow.
Yeah.
And he's humble enough to realize that it was a problem with him and not a problem with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get better. His history of learning through martial arts and those sorts of things. He really isn't afraid to go to recognize when he's lacking and seek out people who are better at it and learn. And that's one of the things I really like about him. Is he's very humble with that.
He's a good guy. I just I like to talk smack to Viet because
absolutely.
Yeah, I like to get on his nerve. I like to get him worked up. That's just me though. That's just Viet. I do that. Hey Viet, if you're watching.
He's a wonderful hot mess, isn't he? He's always worried about something. He's
I have to remind him from time to time, like, dude, just have fun.
He's living a wonderful, amazing life, and he sometimes.
So he was the first Vietnamese male that you met.
That I would say like that I became friends with.
Okay.
In where I live, you've been up where I live in Houston, and that's like it is a diverse area, but not.
Yeah.
There aren't.
You got to come down. You got to come down to our level down here sometimes, Seth.
Right.
Because you're up north.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So I live in East Texas.
Yeah.
So you go to East Texas, and it's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like proper East Texas is like scary rednecks and Hispanic families, and like. You got to know what's going on, and it's much different than other parts of Houston, because Houston's so big and so diverse,
and it's growing for
it's ridiculous. It's even like my kids' school. My kids' school has changed in composition since they started going there. My kids go to Conroe High School.
Yeah.
And my older daughter started there, whatever would have been like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And the percentage of Asian and East Asian students has like quadrupled in those 8 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of those communities are moving trying to move to less expensive parts of Houston, up to Conroe
Yeah.
and places, and seeking, because it's a really good school,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of those communities really, like you said, really value education.
Yeah.
They're trying to make sure their kids are in school systems that are
Right.
high quality school systems, that they can have the
Yeah.
opportunities that they think are appropriate for
Yeah,
their kids.
it's
So
a little cheaper too out there. You know,
it is, but
it's
it's a place where it's cheaper and
Yeah.
there's really
Yeah.
good schools. And if
Yeah.
you can
that's a good combination.
get in both of those things.
Mhm.
And we ended up there completely accidentally.
Yeah, I like the area where you at. I like to be secluded at times. So I'm somewhat conflicted. Like during the day when I'm driving through farm areas, I'm like, man, I love to be here. And then I happen to drive through the farm area at night. I'm like, how can people live out here? Like, there ain't shit out here.
Everything is the thing is in
I
Houston.
just need a home in downtown Houston, and like a day home back out in
Yeah.
the countryside somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's living in any place that's sort of like the outskirts of Houston is like, that's the problem. You're always like 45 minutes from
It's
everything.
peaceful though.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been to my house. You know, I've
Mhm.
got an acre and a half. I've got the big trees. And that's why we liked the northeast part of Houston, because I grew up in a world that had trees.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like the Midwest is all the big
It's all
trees,
about
the big
trees,
pine
yeah,
trees.
yeah.
And like you can find that in Houston if you're in the west or if you're in the
Or
east
you in like an
northeast part of
older
it.
neighborhood.
Or in the older
like
neighborhoods where
Cinco
there's
Ranch
trees.
is really nice. Like you see a lot of trees and stuff
Right.
like that.
But like there's no trees here.
no, it's sad.
Right.
Yeah.
This
I try
feel-
my best. I have a fake tree.
No, this feels like West Texas. When I'm out here, like I feel like Texas, and people are like, "Oh, you live in Texas," and I'm like, "No, I live in like think of Louisiana or the Florida Panhandle."
That's
like,
a good comparison. Yeah.
That's what my part of Houston feels
yeah,
like.
Yeah.
But you get to the west part of Houston, and
Yeah.
it starts to feel like Texas.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have been exposed to Vietnamese people, but you have not been fully, fully exposed, right? Just
Yeah, I
partially
haven't been
exposed.
immersed.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
culture because I
Yeah.
don't
You gotta come
I don't
over.
actually live close to.
I have to have you and your wife come over here and we make some food here.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
We could all go down to Bel Air and go
Yes.
around.
Yes.
Tons of stuff on
See,
Bel Air.
well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the thing is, especially after this fall when my son goes away, my wife and I have to learn to like be married without children, which we haven't really done.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
it's gonna be
it'll be a new journey.
it will be.
Yeah, it'll be a new journey for you guys. Well, for Seth's son, the one who needs to know if your dad and I can connect. Yes, we can connect on many different levels, right?
Right.
Because we both are fathers, and like I say, both of us try our best to be, the best we can be for our kids, and that's where the connection is. We can look different, but ultimately, we all have the same goal. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't hardly talked about motorcycles. How do you
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
like? That's what we do is motorcycles.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing is everybody who shows up with your group,
Mm-hmm.
the Vietnamese and the other Asian riders,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about horsepower and big bikes, and there's like ego in that group.
The group that you've seen so far,
Yeah, like there's speed and ego involved with basically everybody.
A lot of them are still pretty new too. I used to be that way too, like big bikes and stuff. And then
Do you
Yeah.
think
I
it's just?
started
Do you
riding
think
the
it's just because?
65
Do you
and the
think it's just
minis.
because they're new?
I think it
That-
is. I think they just, not even that they're new, but that they just don't ride at the track a lot. Like
Okay.
you ride at the track is just it's so different than
Yeah.
than the street.
yeah, I
you
can't
know? And you
speak for
kind of have
any.
a different mindset.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex.
No,
you gotta help bail me out a little bit on that one because I didn't know how to start to answer Seth's question. Well, I think for me, and a part of it is
I mean, you're part of the problem. You're a big bike. You're a big fast bike guy.
yeah, I love
Like-
it, man. But so I love the big bike for the power. I take more pleasure kicking people's ass on a slower bike, on a bike with less power.
Right.
When it comes to the racetrack, I enjoy the big bike because, like, for me, if I can handle a big bike, I do wheelies. You know,
I know.
don't
Yeah,
want-
like I
right?
can't do wheelies.
So yeah, on a 1000 cc, and I'm a small dude. I'm not a big dude, right?
Right.
So for me, there's a sense of like that's where my ego comes in. Like, oh yeah, you know what? I have a funny story, but how long have we gone with this podcast?
We're coming up on close to 2 hours.
Man,
God,
that's
are
a
we really?
lot.
Oh no.
Yeah, we're getting there.
That,
We're getting there.
hey, I
Sorry
love
for
it.
everybody who watches.
No, I love it because that's what happened when we have really good conversations
Yeah.
going on, right? No, but like a lot of time, like for me, a lot of guys that I've met, I would show up, and I live in the Midwest myself, right? So, and I chose to live in, I say, quote unquote, like better neighborhoods. So a lot of
Okay.
time, I might be either the single Vietnamese person in an area or one of 3 or 5, right? And then you narrow that down to motorcycle riding because the other 3 aren't riding motorcycle,
Right.
right? So it would be just me showing up in
Right.
the parking lot meeting everybody, and I'm a smaller dude, so a lot of time when I show up, some of the guys are like, "Oh, you think you can handle that? Isn't that too much for you?" So like my ego comes in, my pride comes in, like, "Hey, I can handle this, just as much as you." But I do tell the younger guys, the one with a little less experience, is that learn how to ride a bike. Don't go for the big bike immediately. Go for pick a bike. It doesn't matter what it is, but until if you're starting out, you should get something smaller to
Right.
match your skill set, right? And then move up from there. But
Does anybody listen to you?
probably not. I mean, they don't.
Well, I love when people are like, no, I got a small bike. I just got a 600. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think men and their ego is our ego is a big problem for us. Not only when it comes to motorcycle riding, but when it comes to becoming the best person that you can be.
Yeah.
Because a big part of that is having to get over your ego, right? If you want to
Right.
be a best husband, if you want to be a best dad, sometimes you got to step down from where you're sitting.
How do you see that in the Vietnamese culture that you're surrounded with, like that sense of ego and masculinity, and how that affects things? Because
The
you talk
men,
about
the men just feel like they have to have control of things.
okay,
Yeah, so like for me, when I tell people that I let my daughter ride motorcycle, and they're like, "She's a girl. Why are you teaching her how to ride motorcycle?" But I'm like, dude, maybe that's you guys. I want my daughter to know what it's like, so she's not gonna grow up and be easily impressed by somebody else.
right?
So in a way, I'm trying to teach her how to be strong. But yeah, I mean, for the men, they can't be wrong, and they expect the wife to listen to them. They expect the wife and the kids and everybody to follow what they say, no matter how logical what they say can be at times. So, but I think that's the same case for a lot of men, though, in my experience. And I guess I can say that because growing up in America, I'm not only friends with Vietnamese men, but I'm friends with Black, Caucasian, and Hispanic, and whatever.
Right.
One of the guys I know came to me not too long ago and was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna move in with you." And then because he's like, "I'm going through a difficult time with my wife, and I don't think I can be at home anymore." And started talking to him about it. I realized, like, I told him, I said, "Dude, the reason why you guys aren't getting along is because you're not listening to her. Try to listen to her." Guess what? About a month later, he's like, "Bro, I think we're working things out." So, yeah, our ego is a big issue for most men, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been, because I don't have that many peers.
Mhm.
Like I don't have a friend group that's stay-at-home dads.
Okay.
Like there were very few, and like I didn't feel like that was any that I met. Like they weren't.
So you didn't really have anybody that
I
you
didn't.
can
I
talk
didn't
to?
have a peer. Like I don't have a peer group of people that are like me.
Mhm.
of men that are like me.
Mhm.
I think I probably, like, if I had really felt that I needed to, I probably could have searched it out, but
Yeah.
I didn't. I was active in car stuff, and so I had friends. I had car friends, but I never
Yeah.
had friends that were like
That could relate to
that could
what you
relate
would-
to
yeah.
me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's yeah, like I
Did
asked.
you ever feel like they were judging you in
Oh yeah,
in a
but
sense?
I was used to that, right?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
got judged all the time.
Yeah.
So like,
And so you
whatever, it's
got
fine.
past that ego part.
right, I
Yeah.
got over that. I had to get over that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like it's interesting as I get into hanging out with motorcyclists and,
Mhm.
and other people, and
Yeah.
like these are my peers.
Yeah.
I feel because I don't have little kids, because I don't have babies at home.
Mhm.
Like everybody who met me, like if you met me 15 years ago,
Mhm.
there was no time you saw me without a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was the dude with babies all the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And now people don't automatically know that about me.
Yeah.
Like nobody necessarily knows that like my entire life has been taking care of children.
Yeah. Yeah. Same for me, for a period, because like I divorced both of my children's mothers, right? So for a long time, I gave up riding. I've always loved riding. I started riding when I was like 13, 14. And then when I had my son, I was young. And then shortly, his mom and I didn't work out anymore. So I gave up riding. And so for a long period, I didn't go anywhere without my kids, even though they're 12 years apart. But like, for my son, for a long period, I spent a lot of my time with my son, right?
Right.
And then after that, I spent a lot of my time with my daughter. Like I wouldn't go anywhere without my kids. And if I couldn't bring my kids with me, I wouldn't go.
Right.
Like wedding or whatever, I don't care. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And sometimes you kind of have to do things like that on your own, alone, because most people don't understand.
Yeah, it's
And-
different.
Yeah, and if you
that's-
expect people to understand what you're doing in your personal life, you won't be able to do the things that you need to do.
right.
Yeah, because everybody has different expectations,
Yeah, and so
different goals.
and so now like I have a lot of friends through motorcycling
Mhm.
who are single men or who are men who've never had kids.
Yeah.
Which you find a lot in motorcycling, right?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because so many people give up motorcycling when they have kids
Mhm.
for pretty reasonable reasons. Like it is there's a danger associated with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the reasons I did cars is because I made a deal with my wife and I said I'm not going to
You're
ride
safer.
I'm not going to ride motorcycles
Yeah.
when I have kids, even if my perception is like all I'm going to do is like break a leg or break an arm or something
Yeah.
like that. You can't take care of babies with a broken arm.
No. Yeah.
Like, and that was my job.
Right.
Like I can't not be able to do my job. So I did car stuff.
Yeah.
And so like there's reasons to give up motorcycling when you
Yeah.
have kids.
Yeah.
And so many of our peers in motorcycling have never had kids.
Yeah.
And so like I find myself in a world of men who are not the people that I was around for since college, really,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I was around a bunch of single men in college
Yeah.
and I expected that I knew what they were going to be like, and then I wandered off for 20 years into a world of children
Yeah.
in a world that was largely women with children.
Mm-hmm.
And a few men, but not
Yeah.
any real significant close friends,
Mhm.
except for some of my car friends.
Yeah.
And now I'm wandering back into a world of single men with ego,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
it's weird sometimes.
It's weird sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, it can be, it can be, but I feel like I'm sure with your personal experience where, you've gone so many years without, you're used to the thought of not giving a damn if you're
Right.
being judged by somebody.
Right.
It's easier. It's more entertaining to watch, but
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I watch the silliness that is
Yeah.
a bunch of young men in their
even
20s.
older dudes.
Yeah, even older dudes,
Like
right.
they want to show off and they want to be fast and they
Right.
like. Yeah. Well, I we in a group chat with Alex and a bunch of younger guys, and I like to again, it's just my personality. I like to basically in simple term, I like to start shit. I like to talk shit.
That sounds about like you.
Yeah. But for the most part, I just enjoy, like watching them kind of like fight with each other because of,
Because the
their own
egos,
personal
butting
egos.
heads,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just funny. Yeah. So anyway, man, I wish we had more time.
Yeah, if this was we can't do this for like 3 hours. That would be
Yeah,
too long.
no, I mean we could, but you might get in trouble. But the good news is there's always another time, Seth, and I would love for you to come back anytime you want.
Yeah, we'll do this again.
I enjoy our conversation.
You
Like
need to
this
move,
is great.
You need to move your house closer to my house.
Hey, you won't have kids anymore, so
I know.
it'll
Yeah,
be easy.
in the fall it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, there's extra room here.
I'll-
You and your wife can just come and spend a
I'll
night.
be super lonely
There
in the
you
fall,
go.
so I'll be like, Tim, let me come talk to you.
There you go. Anytime, Alex will be here to keep us company too. So anyway, thanks again for coming by and
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate it. It was a really, really good opportunity to learn more about you. Like I say, we met each other at the track, and we see each other at the track, but we don't.
Like a
really
friend of
get to
mine
talk.
says, men don't talk.
Yeah, we should.
We should, but
should.
but in general, men don't talk that much.
Yeah.
So
We need to. I believe.
podcasts are good for that.
Yeah.
Put us in front of a
I
microphone.
talk a lot. I talk a lot of shit. Too.
I agree to both of those.
Huh?
Things. I agree to both of those things. You said.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's healthy.
Yeah.
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 So anyway, thank you to everyone who has tuned in and listened to our conversation today. Happy Friday. Make sure you go out there and enjoy your time with your family, your kids, your wife, your girlfriend, boyfriend. Doesn't matter. Do something to make you happy. Do something to make other people happy. And don't forget, Brian is not here, so I have to do his PSA. Subscribe, hit the like button, and subscribe so that you can be notified before we do our next episode. Have a good night, guys. Yeah. Good?